When I first saw the trailer for Elio, I kind of lost a lot of faith in Pixar. And the first trailer for this movie came out back in 2023 because the film was supposed to come out in March 2024. But due to the strikes and everything going on with the reworking of the schedule with Disney, they kind of just shadow dropped this in June of 2025. So a lot of people probably thought this already came out. But even back in 2023, the concept just didn't seem intriguing enough for me. A lot of times Pixar does put these teasers out a long time in advance, and the jokes just didn't land for me. And it looked like something that would be on the lower end of Pixar's catalog. And I think a lot of that has to do with just the weird state Pixar is in at the moment. They've had some good original films over the past 10 years, like Coco and Soul are two that really stand out to me. But almost everything else in that time has either been an unnecessary sequel or just kind of a mid-original movie. And up until the time this film actually started, I already felt a little disappointed because for whatever reason, they still haven't brought back the Pixar shorts. That was one of the coolest parts of seeing a Pixar movie in theaters, and they have stopped doing that for whatever reason. But once I got over that, the movie started, and by the time the credits rolled, I was pleasantly surprised that this was a solid original Pixar movie. And the fact that it's still bombing at the box office is clearly an indication that Disney just wants Pixar to turn into this sequel factory machine. And the reason everyone is saying that on the internet is because the marketing for Elio has been atrocious, to say the least. I mean, there are Disney Plus series like Skeleton Crew that no one really watched that had a lot more promotion than a movie in theaters. And it's like Disney refuses to promote anything Pixar unless it's a sequel, a spin-off, or it ties into one of their streaming shows. And it is a little frustrating because even when Pixar is not at its best, a lot of the movies still tend to be better than 90% of the things kids have access to. And this just feels like the fifth or sixth Pixar film in a row that Disney just kind of put out there and told Pixar, well, good luck. Hope it makes you some money. It's just a really bizarre strategy. And it sucks for a movie like this because it is a solid movie. It's not a Pixar masterpiece, but it does have components of what makes for a good Pixar movie. You have good characters, a good emotional core. You have a world that feels unique, even if the sci-fi backdrops feel a little more basic than a lot of the other Pixar movies. And a lot of people online have said that the box office for this film, which has been pretty bad so far, is a reflection of the quality of the movie. And I always find it funny that those people don't actually watch movies, they just complain about them on the internet and milk it for views. And that's the thing with movies like Elio. When Pixar was in its prime, you had the trust of the audience, and people would go to Pixar movies no matter what the film was. And even if a movie was on the weaker side of Pixar at the time, say something like Brave, a movie I don't really like, but a lot of people enjoyed it enough, and it wasn't bad enough to the point that it made a lot of people fall off the Pixar train. You could get away with a couple of those movies if you're still doing great movies after those or before those. If you just stick an okay movie in every once in a while, it's fine. It's not going to hurt your reputation. But when a lot of the movies are just fine or solid, you tend to lose a good amount of the audience that goes to see these movies. And you need to make something that's great to catch people's attention, especially the time we're living in. The economy is not doing great. A lot of people are losing jobs right now. And a lot of people don't want to drop like $60 just on movie tickets to take their family to the movies. That's not including the popcorn, the drinks. It's an expensive thing to do. And a lot of people just want to wait until it comes out on VOD or something like that. And that's why your movie has to be great. It has to be so good that you know, like, okay, this movie is going to be awesome. Everyone says it's awesome. I'm going to take my family to go see this. And Elio is not a movie I can tell someone to go spend $100+ on to take their family. I feel like it's pretty similar to the camp that Elemental was in, which ironically did end up kind of bombing at the box office in the beginning, but then found its legs later on in its run. And I think you have like 4 tiers of Pixar, right? You have the top tier, which is like Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, most of the Toy Story movies. You have the really strong second tier. I would put stuff like Soul, Coco, the first Inside Out movie in that category. Then you have solid, which I would put like Bugs Life, the first Cars, maybe Turning Red. And then you just have misses like Cars 2 and The Good Dinosaur. And to me, Elio is somewhere in the middle of that third tier. Like, I don't think it's towards the top of the fourth tier or even the bottom of the third. I think it's just comfortably in the solid category. They're movies that have their moments and you feel good while watching them, but they don't scream instant classic like a lot of the other Pixar movies did in the past. The film is directed by multiple people, one of them being Do-Mi Shi, who also made Turning Red and the short film Bao, which I know a lot of people loved when that came out. And a lot of people loved Turning Red too. I thought it was solid. It's not one of my favorites from Pixar, but I did appreciate that teenage girl perspective. And I'll always root for original Pixar movies that come from a clearly talented filmmaker. But she got so screwed with Disney Plus at the time. It was this, Luca, and Soul. They kind of just got dumped on a streaming streaming platform for free, and they had no real shot at being a box office success if they weren't even eligible for the box office. And that decision by Disney is still up there for one of the most moronic moves in Hollywood history this century. The only one that was worse in the pandemic was probably HBO and Warner Brothers putting all their movies on a streaming service and theaters the same day. That's the only one that tops the Disney Plus move. She co-directed with Madeline Sharafian, who worked on the Pixar short Burrow that I remember enjoying. And the third director was Adrian Molina, who previously did the story for Coco. So clearly these are three up-and-comers at Pixar, and I think all three of them have potential, and they're probably three people you don't want to screw over in terms of their movie. And one of the things I really loved about Elio was just the look of the animation here. It looks ridiculously good and detailed at so many points, and not even in terms of all the alien designs or their world. Like, all that looked good, and you expect that kind of thing to look good in a Pixar movie. I mean, they have the ability to make a kid worm, and it's one of the cutest things they've made in a long time. But there are shots very early on, specifically on Earth, whether it's an environment and there's rain happening, or Elio's in a museum kind of looking at the stars. It is just stunning to look at. And I like how, even though Pixar's style of animation hasn't really changed over the past 30 years, you could tell they haven't just settled. They're always looking for slight ways to up their game. It all just looks so polished. And even if Toy Story 5 does end up feeling like it's just milking the franchise at this point, I have no doubt the film is going to look incredible from an animation perspective. And I think Elio the movie works because Elio the character is pretty likable. He's one of those kids that is clearly dealing with some serious self-esteem issues. He's a bit awkward, but he has that classic kid energy of somebody who's always dreaming. And it never comes off as annoying, because I feel like a lot of writers would take a character like this and make them just so hard to watch because they just go a little too far. And Elio just feels like he reaches the perfect balance of, like, if this was annoying, he's like right here where he's still like just not annoying enough. I know that sounds kind of bad, but I mean it as a compliment, where he's just tolerable enough in terms of his attitude, but you still care so much about the character that you get a bit more away with it. And obviously throughout the arc of the film, he grows on you regardless, but I just like how he feels like a kid that is trying to distract himself from all the problems he's dealing with. I thought Pixar handled that really well here. And the relationship he has with his Aunt Olga feels real. Like, it feels like they did a good job with that chemistry and their arc as a whole. And I think both of those characters, whether they're separate or together, do a good job, like most Pixar movies do, of tugging at your heartstrings a little bit. I also think the entire team did a really good job with all of the side characters here. All of the aliens, whether they have a cool design or they have funny dialogue, they all feel like good side characters to have in a movie like this. Whatever amount of money Elio makes at the box office, I'm sure it will double with the amount of Glorden plushies that get sold. Like I mentioned, he's got to be one of the most lovable little things that Pixar has made in a very long time. Maybe most parents don't want to buy their kid a larva toy to cuddle at night, but I still think he's cute enough that's going to win a lot of those parents over. And out of every alien design they probably went through for this movie, I think they ended up with the best one for that kind of character. One thing Pixar still knows how to do, though, even in like their mid-tier kind of stuff, is give you that emotional gut punch. They've made almost 30 movies now, and I feel like 20 of them will make you feel something. And even when you know it's coming, and even if it doesn't hit on the same level as some of their other more classic Pixar movies do, I still heard a lot of crying in the theater that I was sitting in. And I think as long as Pixar never loses that, while they're still in this kind of weird limbo state, if they just plateau and still make solid movies for another year or two, if they could keep that emotional core, they're going to keep the core audience still coming back. I think you still need to make a greater movie than this to bring a lot of more general audiences back to the theater. And obviously it's not like Pixar is trying to make just solid movies. I'm sure they want to make every film they make amazing, but I think they do need to try a little bit harder. Like, I think we are so close to being back to where Pixar wants to be. We're just not fully there yet. Because do I think people are going to enjoy Elio? Yes. Do I think it's going to be anybody's favorite Pixar movie? No. But I do think it deserves more support than it's gotten. People that talk about it on the internet as if they have seen the movie should probably go out and watch movies before they make videos about movies. And to me, I'd rather support something like this in theaters this instead of a Toy Story 5 or an Incredibles 3. Even though Toy Story 4 was surprisingly kind of decent, stuff like Incredibles 2 just has really not been it for me. And I'd rather support stuff like this instead of the same recycled franchise over and over again. Bob Iger has already come out and said he wants Disney and Pixar to work on more sequels, which is kind of a bad look for something like Elio, because you would want this movie to succeed and prove someone like that wrong. But when movies like Elio just bomb at the box office while movies like Inside Out 2 crush it, it's hard to argue against that from a financial perspective. And it gives Disney execs the excuse to say, look, Pixar original movies, they're too much risk, while Pixar sequels make too much money. And my argument against that would be that Disney doesn't even try and promote their more original stuff. And it's not like it's fully on Disney. I do think Pixar themselves has to make better movies. Even though Elio is solid, you need movies that are on the tier of those first classic movies. And obviously a lot of people that worked on those classic movies are no longer at Pixar, but that is still the bar that has been set for the general public when it comes to thinking about what a Pixar movie can be. And look, as a 28-year-old man, I don't have to go out and watch a movie like Elio, right? Like it's almost kind of funny that I would spend a Friday to go see something like this when I don't have kids. But from somebody that watches pretty much all the movies I can and loves movies and grew up watching Pixar movies, I want to be able to support the original ones that are solid. Like if this was The Good Dinosaur, a movie I hated, it's probably my least favorite Pixar movie, I still wouldn't be telling people to go out and see something like that. But I do think a movie like this that is solid, just like Elemental, deserves to be seen, especially if you're into the Pixar animated thing already. Because when I do eventually have kids, I want to be able to take them to a movie that doesn't make me want to drive off a cliff after I watch it. I want to be able to watch something that makes me feel something. I want something that makes my kids laugh. And you got to support movies like that if you want future generations to grow up on good kids movies. Good kids movies is what gets people into good movies. And I don't want my options for my kids in like 8 years to be WALL-E 3, Cars 7, or Minecraft 4. Elio is not in my top 10 movies of the year, but I am rooting for it. I hope once it hits Disney Plus that it gets that Elemental or Encanto fire behind it, because I do think it's a good movie and I think a lot of families are going to end up enjoying it. This is Chase. Thank you so much for watching as always. And like I said, if you want to watch a 28-year-old man talk about a new Pixar movie whenever it comes out, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future Pixar videos.